Hannah's prayer, 1 Samuel 1, verses 1 through 20. Hannah loved God. She wanted to have a baby, but she wasn't able to have any children. Hannah and her husband went to the tabernacle. She prayed to God, "If you will give me a baby boy, I will see that he serves you all his life." Eli was a priest. He saw Hannah praying. She explained, "I am crying out to the Lord because I want him to answer my prayer." Eli gently told her, "Go in peace, and may God give you what you ask for." Sure enough, Hannah and her husband had a baby boy. They thanked God for their new son. They named him Samuel. A voice in the night, 1 Samuel chapter 3. When Samuel was a little boy, Hannah brought him to live at the tabernacle. She had promised God that Samuel would serve him all his life. The priest Eli would now take care of Samuel. He would teach Samuel about God. One night, while Samuel was sleeping, he heard a voice say, "Samuel." He ran to Eli and said, "Here I am." But Eli said, "I did not call you." Then Samuel went back to bed. Samuel heard a voice call his name 2 more times. Each time, Samuel ran to Eli. Finally, Eli told Samuel, "I think God is speaking to you. Next time, say, 'Yes, Lord, I am listening.'" Then Samuel went back to bed. "Samuel, Samuel," the voice said again. This time, Samuel answered, "Yes, Lord, I am listening." From that moment on, Samuel gave messages to God's people. He was a special prophet of God. Israel's first king, 1 Samuel chapters 8 through 10. When Samuel was an old man, God's people said, "We want a king to rule over us." Samuel asked God for help. God told Samuel to warn the people about all the trouble a king would bring. A king would make the young men join his army, and the people would have to give the best things they owned to support the king. Samuel warned the people, but they still would not listen. Then God told Samuel to give them a king. God led Samuel to a man named Saul. Samuel poured oil on Saul's head. This was a sign that Saul was God's choice for their new king. Saul hid because he was shy. The people found him. Then Samuel said, "Here is your king." Everyone cheered and shouted, "Long live the king!" A good heart, 1 Samuel chapters 15, verse 1 through 16, verse 3. Saul was a good king for about 20 years. Then he began to disobey God. God was sorry he made Saul the king. Samuel was sad about it too. God sent Samuel to a man named Jesse to find a new king. When Samuel met Jesse, he said, "I would like to meet your sons." When Samuel saw them, he thought, "These are strong-looking men." God said, "I do not look at the outside of a person. I look at the inside of a person. I look at the heart." Samuel asked Jesse, "Do you have another son?" Jesse said, "Yes, his name is David. He is out in the field with the sheep." Samuel asked to see him. As soon as David arrived, God told Samuel, "He is the one I want to be the next king." Samuel anointed David. He poured oil on David's head, and David was filled with God's power. David and Goliath, 1 Samuel chapter 17, verses 1 through 51. The Philistines were enemies of God. Their army came to fight King Saul's army. A giant soldier named Goliath yelled, "Bring out your best soldier to fight me." "If your strongest soldier defeats me, we will be your slaves," he boomed. "If I defeat him, you will be our slaves." King Saul's soldiers were afraid. They did not want to fight the giant. Meanwhile, young David was taking food to his brothers. They were soldiers in King Saul's army. When David reached the camp, he saw Goliath. David heard the giant's challenge. "I am not afraid to fight the giant," said David. King Saul called for David and told him, "You cannot fight this giant. You are too young." David replied, "God will be with me." King Saul gave his armor to David, but it was big and heavy. David wasn't used to wearing armor. David went to a nearby stream and picked up 5 stones. He stood before Goliath. The giant laughed at him, but David didn't care. He said, "I come before you in the name of the Lord who rules over all." David put a stone in his sling and ran toward the giant. Then he let the stone fly. It hit Goliath's forehead, and he fell to the ground. The Philistines saw that their hero was dead, and they ran away. Best friends, 1 Samuel chapter 16, verse 14 through 23, and 18 through 20. King Saul became grumpy. His servants asked David to play his harp for the king. The music cheered him up, so the king invited David to live in the palace. David became friends with King Saul's son, Prince Jonathan, and Jonathan's sister, Michal. David won many battles for the king. The people said David was a better fighter than the king. This made King Saul very angry and jealous. "Everyone likes David more than me," he thought. King Saul became so angry that he threw a spear at David, but David escaped. Then one day, Prince Jonathan warned David, "You must run far away. They promised to always be best friends." King David, 2 Samuel chapter 1, verses 1 through chapter 2, verse 4, 1 Kings chapter 2, verses 1 through 3. Saul chased David, but he never caught him. God watched over David. Then one day, David heard some sad news. King Saul and Prince Jonathan had died in battle. The people remembered what God had told them, and they went to find David. "David, you are now our king," they exclaimed. King David ruled over Israel for 40 years. He wrote many songs about God called Psalms. He even had plans to build a temple for God. David was a man who was dear to God's heart. When King David was old, he told his son Solomon, "You will be the next king of Israel. Be strong and obey God with all your heart. Then he will bless you." The Lord is my shepherd, Psalm 23. This is one of King David's songs about God. The Lord is my shepherd. He gives me everything I need. He lets me lie down in fields of green grass. He leads me beside quiet waters. He gives me new strength. He guides me in the right paths for the honor of his name. Even though I walk through the darkest valley, I will not be afraid. You, God, are with me. Your shepherd's rod and staff comfort me. You prepare a feast for me right in front of my enemies. You pour oil on my head, and my cup runs over. I am sure that your goodness and love will follow me all the days of my life, and I will live in the house of the Lord forever. The Wise King, 1 King chapters 3, verse 5 through chapter 10, verse 13. King Solomon loved God very much. God spoke to him in a dream. "Ask for anything you want," God said. King Solomon answered, "Give me wisdom so that I will know the difference between right and wrong." God was pleased with Solomon's answer. "I will give wisdom to you," God said. "I will also give you riches and honor." King Solomon was wiser than any other person. He spoke 3,000 proverbs or wise sayings and wrote over 1,000 songs. He knew many things about plants and animals. King Solomon was famous. People from all over the world came to see him. The Queen of Sheba came from far away to ask him questions. King Solomon answered all of her questions. Then the queen said, "You truly are a wise king. May the Lord your God be praised." King Solomon ordered thousands of workers to build a temple for God. When the temple was finished, it was beautiful. King Solomon planned a celebration. All the people of Israel came to see the temple. They were happy to have a new place to worship. They all said, "God is good, and his love lasts forever." God watches over Elijah. 1 Kings chapter 16, verse 29 through chapter 17, verse 7. After Solomon, many kings ruled over Israel. One king named Ahab did not love God. King Ahab worshipped idols. God had a prophet named Elijah. God gave Elijah special messages to tell the people. Elijah told King Ahab, "God is angry with you because you do not serve him." Then Elijah told the king, "It will not rain for a very long time. The crops will dry up and your people will go hungry." King Ahab was very angry with Elijah. God told Elijah to escape to the desert. He led Elijah to a brook. Each day, Elijah drank from it, and each day God sent birds with food. Elijah stayed there until the brook dried up. Elijah helps a widow. 1 Kings chapter 17, verses 8 through 16. God told Elijah to go to a nearby town. There he would find a woman who would take care of him. When Elijah arrived, he saw a widow gathering sticks. He asked her for some water and bread. The woman said, "My son and I only have enough flour and oil for one last meal." Elijah replied, "Don't be afraid. God will not let you go hungry." The woman poured him some water and made him some bread. Because she took care of Elijah, God took care of her. The woman's flour and oil never ran out. Fire from heaven. 1 Kings chapter 18. Ahab was still king of Israel. He prayed to an idol called Baal. He asked Baal to bring rain, but rain did not fall. The crops did not grow, and the people cried, "We are hungry." The prophet Elijah brought King Ahab a message from God. Elijah said, "There is no rain because you worship a statue instead of the true God." This made King Ahab very angry. Elijah wanted to show the people that his God was the one true God. So Elijah gave them a challenge. He and the King Ahab and all the Israelites marched up Mount Carmel. Elijah told the worshippers of Baal, "Build an altar for your God, and I will build an altar for my God." Then they placed an offering on each altar. The worshippers of Baal cried out for their God to send fire. They danced around the altar, but nothing happened. Elijah teased Baal's priests. "Maybe Baal is on vacation." Elijah dug a trench all around his altar. He poured water over everything. Water even filled the trench. Elijah prayed, and suddenly fire came down from heaven. The sacrifice burned up. The stone altar burned up. Even the water in the trench was gone. When the people saw what had happened, they bowed down and worshipped the one true God. Before long, God allowed it to rain again. Chariots of fire. 1 Kings chapter 19, verses 19 through 21, and 2 Kings chapter 2, verses 1 through 13. A man named Elisha was plowing the field. God chose Elisha to be Elijah's helper. Over the years, they traveled together. They told many people about God's love. One day, they stopped beside a river. Elijah took off his coat and struck the water with it. The river opened up, and they walked across on a dry path. Elijah was getting older. God was preparing to take him to heaven. Elijah asked Elisha if there was anything he wanted. Elisha answered, "I want a double portion of the Spirit God has given to you." Suddenly, a fiery chariot pulled by fiery horses came down from the sky. It separated the two of them, and Elijah went up to heaven in a whirlwind to be with God. Elijah's coat fell to the ground. Elisha picked it up. He struck the water with it, and the water parted. Then Elisha knew God had granted his request. Jars of oil. 2 Kings chapter 4, verses 1 through 7. Elisha helped many people. One day he met a woman. She was very upset. She said, "Please help me. I owe a man some money. If I do not pay him," the woman said, "he will make my sons become his slaves." Elisha asked her, "Do you own anything?" She said, "I have a little oil." Elisha said, "Gather some empty jars from your friends, then go inside and pour your oil into them." The woman obeyed, and God made her tiny bit of oil fill all the jars. She sold all the oil and paid the man back, and she took care of her family with the leftover money. Elisha's room, 2 Kings chapter 4, verse 8 through 17. Elisha often traveled to the town of Shunem. He became friends with a nice couple who lived there. One evening, while Elisha was visiting, the couple surprised him. They said, "We built a room in our house just for you." Elisha was so thankful for his friends, he prayed for them to be happy. Elisha said to the woman, "A year from now, you will have a child." Sure enough, a year later, God gave them a beautiful baby boy. Naaman is healed. 2 Kings chapter 5, verse 1 through 15. Naaman was a great army commander. He was a brave soldier, but he had a problem. He had a terrible skin disease called leprosy. One day, Naaman's wife said, "My servant told me you should go see the prophet Elisha. He can heal you." Naaman reached Elisha's home. Elisha sent out a man with this message: "Dunk yourself in the Jordan River 7 times, then you will be healed." At first, Naaman thought it was a silly idea, but his servant said, "Please go. This is not a hard thing to do." So Naaman dunked himself in the Jordan River 7 times. When he was done, Naaman's skin disease was gone. Naaman was so excited that he ran to thank Elisha for curing him. Naaman said, "Israel's God is the only true God." Boy King Josiah, 2 Kings chapter 22, verse 1 through 23, verse 3. A boy named Josiah became the king of Judah when he was only 8 years old. Josiah loved God. Many bad kings had ruled before him. The temple in Jerusalem had started to crumble. People had not worshipped there for many years. King Josiah decided to fix it up. He wanted his people to worship God in the temple again. So King Josiah hired workers to repair it. One day, as the men were working, a priest found a scroll hidden in the wall. The priest showed the scroll to the king. It was the book of the law. King Josiah called everyone together. Then he read them God's laws. The people all made a promise to each other and to God: "We will always obey God's laws." The Brave Queen, Esther, chapters 1 through 10. Esther was Jewish. That means she was an Israelite. She lived in the land of Persia with her older cousin Mordecai. The king of Persia needed a new queen. He announced, "Bring me the most beautiful women from all over my kingdom." Esther was one of the women sent to the palace. When the king met Esther, he chose her to be his queen. Haman was the king's chief helper. He hated the Jewish people. They were God's people. Haman wanted everyone to bow down to him. Mordecai refused to bow down to Haman. Mordecai would only bow down to God. Haman went to the king. He said, "The Jews are bad people. You should sign a law that will help me get rid of them." So the king signed the new law. God's people were in great danger. Mordecai heard about the new law. He ran to tell Esther, "You must save yourself and the rest of God's people. Perhaps God has made you the queen for this reason." So Esther came up with a plan. It would be very risky for her. Esther invited the king and Haman to a special dinner. Then she asked the king, "Why does Haman want to get rid of me?" The king was surprised. She said, "I am Jewish. Haman tricked you into signing a new law that would get rid of all the Jews." The king told his guards, "Arrest Haman!" Then he made Mordecai his new chief helper. He told Queen Esther, "I will make a new law that will keep you and your people safe." God used Esther to save his people. Fiery furnace, Daniel chapter 3. King Nebuchadnezzar's army had defeated the Israelites. Now he was their ruler. King Nebuchadnezzar built a golden statue. Then he made a bad law. It said, when the music plays, everyone must bow down and worship the statue. Those who disobey will be thrown into the fiery furnace. The music began to play, and the people fell down and worshipped the statue. But Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego refused. "We only worship the true God," they said. The king was mad. The king said, "Make the furnace extra hot." He had the 3 men thrown inside. Yet, when the king looked into the furnace, there were 4 men walking around. One of them looked like an angel from God. The king shouted to the men, "Come out! Your God has saved you!" The fire had not hurt them. They did not even smell like smoke. So the king made them rulers in his kingdom. Daniel and the lions. Daniel chapter 6. Darius became the new king of Babylon. Daniel was his chief helper. The king's other helpers did not like Daniel. They said to the king, "You are such a wonderful king. You should make a new law that for the next 30 days everyone must pray only to you. If they disobey, they will be thrown into the lion's den." King Darius made the new law, but Daniel kept praying to God because Daniel loved God. The king's helpers caught him praying. They told King Darius, "Now you must throw Daniel into the lion's den." The king knew he had been tricked, but he had to obey his new law. Daniel was thrown into the lion's den. He was not afraid. He knew God would take care of him. King Darius told Daniel, "I hope your God will save you." That night, the king could not sleep. He was too worried about Daniel. At sunrise, the king hurried to the lion's den. "Has your God saved you from the lions?" he called. "Yes," answered Daniel. "My God has sent his angel to protect me." So Daniel returned to the palace. Then King Darius ordered everyone to honor and respect God. Jonah and the big fish. Jonah chapter 1, verses 1 through chapter 3, verse 10. Jonah was a prophet of God. One day, God told Jonah, "Go to the big city of Nineveh and tell them to stop doing bad things." But Jonah ran away. He did not want to go to Nineveh. Instead, he got on a boat to sail across the sea. God sent a big storm to stop Jonah. The sailors on the boat were afraid. They thought the boat was going to sink. Jonah told the sailors, "My God has sent this storm. If you throw me into the water, the sea will become calm again." So the sailors threw Jonah into the raging sea. Instantly, the sea became calm. Just then, Jonah saw a big fish coming. Gulp! The fish swallowed Jonah. For 3 days and nights, Jonah was inside the fish. He prayed to God, "Please forgive me." Then God told the fish to spit Jonah onto the dry land. God told Jonah a second time, "Go and tell the people of Nineveh to stop doing bad things." This time, Jonah obeyed God. The people in Nineveh were sorry for doing bad things, so God forgave them.